The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that hums in your ears, like the pause before a lightning strike. Deep in the heart of San Francisco, inside the United States District Court for the Northern District of California, all eyes were on one man, Elon Reeve Musk. Not the engineer, not the innovator, not the billionaire. Today, he was just the defendant. Behind the bench sat Judge Edward Chen, known for his procedural discipline and calm demeanor. But on this day, something unexpected broke through that composed exterior. A smile. Faint, controlled, but real. "Mr. Musk," the judge began, leaning forward slightly, "you've told this court that your tweet claiming funding secured was merely aspirational, not factual, not binding, just words." There was a pause. It stretched long enough for every reporter in the room to raise their pen. "That argument is so far removed from reality," the judge added, "it would be comical, if not for the billions of dollars at stake." And then a quiet chuckle, dry, unapologetic. The sound echoed against the paneled walls. A federal judge had just laughed at Elon Musk. The moment sent a ripple through the courtroom. Musk's lawyers shifted uncomfortably. Cameras outside the building caught glimpses of their uneasy faces through the window. Inside, the man himself didn't flinch. His posture remained rigid, but his eyes, those eyes, locked onto the judge with an intensity that didn't read as embarrassment. It was calculation. For years, Musk had lived above the line, creating companies that pushed boundaries and bending rules in ways few dared. But the law, federal securities law, was one boundary he hadn't expected to push quite this far. His 2018 tweet had been simple. 12 words. "Am considering taking Tesla private at $420. Funding secured." It hit like a lightning bolt. The stock shot up. Billions shifted in the market. And when the deal never materialized, the fallout began. The SEC stepped in, quickly and forcefully. A settlement forced Musk to pay a fine and step down as Tesla's chairman. But the civil suits? They were just beginning. Judge Chen made it clear. This wasn't just about one tweet. It was about whether a billionaire CEO could move markets with off-the-cuff statements and then hide behind ambiguity. The court takes judicial notice that Tesla stock rose 11% following that tweet, he reminded everyone. That represents billions in market movement based on what you're now calling casual wordplay. That morning, Musk didn't interrupt. He didn't tweet. He didn't roll his eyes or mutter to his team. He sat still. Most people, when publicly humiliated, shrink. Musk didn't. If anything, he seemed to sharpen, like a steel cable pulled tight. His legal team, though confident, began to sense the tide turning. Every argument they offered was met with a precedent. Every theory was answered with law. And still, Musk said nothing. But outside the courtroom, the world was watching. His supporters flooded forums, defending him. Markets hesitated, Twitter debated. And inside a quiet conference room during the lunch break, Elon Musk sat alone, staring at his phone. No lunch, no talking, just texts and calls and plans. When his lead attorney returned with a revised approach, Musk waved him off. "We're not going to outlawyer a judge who's already made up his mind," he said. "What does that mean?" the lawyer asked, already sensing the answer. Musk turned his screen. "A plan." "You can't be serious," the lawyer said. "This violates every protocol." "It violates no law," Musk interrupted. "It just doesn't fit the frame they're using." By the time the court reconvened, something had shifted. Musk returned to the table, calm, maybe even serene. Judge Chen raised an eyebrow but said nothing. And then Elon Musk stood. "Your Honor," he said clearly, "I respectfully request permission to address the court directly." Gasps rippled across the gallery. Lawyers froze. This wasn't done. Not in federal court. Not like this. Judge Chen, to his credit, was curious. "This is highly irregular, Mr. Musk, but I'll allow it." Everyone braced. What followed wasn't an argument. It wasn't legal posturing. It was something else entirely. "Your Honor," Musk began, "you laughed at my defense today, and maybe you were right to. I've spent the last hour thinking, not about the law, but about the people, the investors, the trust. What they deserve isn't excuses. It's restitution." A long pause. He continued, "Within 24 hours, I will create a $3 billion fund. No strings, no legal tricks. Any investor who can show real harm from that tweet will be compensated fully." Stunned silence. "I'll also commit $2 billion to the SEC, specifically to improve enforcement tools, public education, transparency technology. And lastly, I'll redirect all of my Tesla stock options for the next 3 years to factory employees, those who build what we dream." The courtroom was stunned. "This is not a settlement offer," Musk clarified. "This is happening, regardless of the court's decision. I only ask that this process end without a formal fraud finding that would limit my ability to lead." Judge Chen said nothing at first. The courtroom sat still, awash in disbelief. Then he called a recess. Legal commentators rushed outside. Analysts stumbled to describe what had just happened. "He just offered more money than most judgments," one said. "He changed the question." And that's exactly what Musk had done. He didn't argue. He rewrote the rules. When the court reconvened 3 hours later, the mood had shifted from tense to electric. Gone was the quiet smugness of the plaintiff's attorneys. Gone, too, was the quiet defeat that had hung over Musk's legal team just hours earlier. Now everyone sat with the same posture, alert, uncertain, waiting to see whether the unthinkable might actually be accepted by a federal court. Judge Chen entered the room slowly, carefully. He took his seat without looking at anyone, his eyes focused on the thick packet of documents now in front of him, documents outlining Elon Musk's unprecedented plan. Restitution, investment in the system he had allegedly undermined, and redistribution of his own corporate gains. He read for almost 10 minutes in complete silence. No movement, no questions. Then he looked up. "Mr. Musk," he said, removing his glasses and placing them neatly on the bench, "you are asking this court to deviate from traditional findings and remedies. You are offering restitution without a ruling, relief without liability. And you are committing to consequences greater than those that would likely be imposed through judgment." Musk nodded once. Judge Chen continued, "This court exists to protect the integrity of the financial markets and the rights of those who invest in them. Your tweet disrupted that integrity, that much is clear, but your proposal, if implemented as described, achieves those same goals through unconventional means." Another pause. "I must ask again, on the record, are you prepared to implement these funds without the court's endorsement, regardless of whether your motion is accepted?" "I am, Your Honor," Musk replied calmly. "And you agree to third-party administration, no control over the disbursement, eligibility, or communications?" "I do." Chen turned to the plaintiff's table. "Ms. Reynolds, do you wish to respond?" Victoria Reynolds stood slowly, as if weighing each movement. "Your Honor," she said carefully, "we believe Mr. Musk's conduct caused measurable harm. We believe a formal judgment would establish needed precedent, but..." She looked briefly at her clients in the gallery, ordinary people in business attire, nervous and confused by the turn of events. "But we also believe that actual, fast, and generous restitution serves our clients' interests in a way no years-long litigation can." She sat down. Judge Chen tapped his pen once on the bench. "This court will take the matter under consideration overnight. A ruling will be issued in the morning." He adjourned the session, stood, and exited. Outside, the crowd waiting for news had doubled. Cameras flashed. Headlines were already forming. "Did Musk just win by losing?" one journalist asked into a live mic. By 9 p.m., every major news outlet was reporting on the event. CNN opened with the line, "Elon Musk has done what many thought impossible. He turned a federal courtroom into a stage and walked off it, not as a convict, but as a designer of his own justice. The Musk Justice Fund, as social media quickly dubbed it, became a global trending topic. The following morning, Judge Chen's written ruling was released just after 10 a.m. It was brief, barely 12 pages, highly unusual for a case of this scale. But it was clear. The court accepted Musk's proposal. This court recognizes that while unconventional, the proposed action achieves the goals of the Securities Exchange Act, investor restitution, deterrence of misconduct, and preservation of market integrity, the opinion read. Accordingly, this court will close the case as resolved without admission of fraud, but with acknowledgement of harm. The ruling stunned the legal community. Musk had effectively created a third legal outcome, not guilty, not liable, but accountable. And the numbers were staggering. By noon that same day, the first transfers had begun. Small retail investors who had shown lost documentation received funds directly into their accounts within 48 hours. By the end of the week, over 18,000 claims had been processed. Even the harshest critics were forced to admit the system had never worked this fast. Meanwhile, at the SEC, cautious optimism turned into strategic reassessment. The $2 billion fund Musk had offered for enforcement and education was unlike anything the commission had ever managed. Under tight ethical oversight, new teams were formed to explore real-time fraud detection tools and machine learning models for investor risk alerts, technologies the SEC had long hoped for but lacked the budget to develop. For Musk, the impact was more nuanced. Public perception split hard. Some hailed him as a visionary who rewrote the system with purpose. Others claimed he'd bought his way out of accountability. But in boardrooms, law firms, and regulatory agencies, a deeper concern had taken root. Was this repeatable? Could any billionaire now circumvent legal process with a large enough wire transfer and a heartfelt speech? Or was this a one-time anomaly, something only someone with Musk's combination of visibility, influence, and capital could pull off? At a closed-door meeting among senior partners at a major New York law firm, the question was blunt. Is this the new precedent? The answer wasn't legal, it was practical. It is, one senior partner replied, if your client is rich enough to make it irresistible. In the weeks that followed, more billionaires facing litigation began quietly asking their legal teams, what's our Musk play? But few could match the scale or boldness of his move. Even so, the landscape had changed. In the halls of Congress, lawmakers debated the implications. Some called for emergency legislation banning such settlements without findings of fact. Others argued it was the beginning of more agile justice. But the investors, the people who had lost money, been misled, and waited years for closure, received it within weeks. That fact couldn't be ignored, and neither could the optics of what came next. At Tesla's Fremont factory, a small ceremony was held, privately, where the first batch of Musk's forfeited stock options was formally transferred into an employee trust. Workers who had never owned a single share now held stakes in the company they helped build. For many of them, it wasn't about the money. It was about being seen, respected, included. 3 months later, Musk appeared at a low-profile legal symposium at Stanford Law, invited not as a defendant, but as a case study. He didn't speak, but he sat quietly as a panel of scholars debated the implications of his settlement. One professor, a soft-spoken expert in corporate accountability, summarized it best. What Elon Musk did wasn't an escape, it was an evolution. He offered accountability, not through denial or delay, but through disproportionate restitution. It's not justice as we know it, but maybe it's justice that works. Outside the courthouse, the air had changed. Not just the weather, though a sharp wind had picked up, scattering the pages of journalists' notes, but something deeper. The public perception of the case had shifted in an instant. The man who entered the courtroom as a cornered defendant was now being talked about like a disruptor once again. Only this time, not of rockets or cars, but of law itself. By the time court reconvened, 3 hours had passed. But that silence, the stillness that followed Musk's proposal, still hung over the room like smoke. Judge Chen returned with a stack of papers, meticulously annotated. His expression was unreadable. This was a man who had spent decades protecting the boundaries of legal precedent. But what Musk had proposed wasn't technically illegal, just unimaginable. "I've reviewed the documents submitted by Mr. Musk and his team," Judge Chen began slowly, "and I have questions." What followed wasn't so much a courtroom examination as it was a cross between a TED Talk and a Senate hearing. Chen grilled Musk on logistics, transparency, accountability. Musk, in turn, answered with precise, thoughtful detail. His voice never rose. He never wavered. It was, by many accounts, the most disciplined public performance of his life. "You're telling this court," Chen said at one point, "that you will unilaterally create a multi-billion-dollar restitution and enforcement mechanism without requiring legal exoneration?" "I'm saying I will do it regardless," Musk replied. "And if this court refuses to acknowledge the offer?" Chen asked. "The transfers begin at midnight either way," Musk said simply. "This isn't leverage, it's resolution." In the gallery, even the most cynical legal minds leaned forward. By the following morning, headlines told the story in dramatically different ways. Musk buys his way out of court. A new legal precedent born in Silicon Valley. Is this what justice looks like when you're worth $200 billion? On cable news, the talking heads couldn't keep up. Half the anchors celebrated the outcome as visionary, a masterstroke that saved time, money, and heartache for thousands of shareholders. The other half saw it as proof that the ultra-wealthy could operate beyond consequence. What few saw coming was what happened next. At Tesla's Fremont factory the next day, something unexpected occurred. Workers, thousands of them, opened internal emails informing them that Musk had redistributed his stock options directly into a shared employee fund. Bonuses would be calculated based on tenure and output. It was not a PR stunt. It was a shift in capital on a scale rarely seen. "They told us the CEO gave up his next 3 years' options," one assembly line supervisor said in disbelief. "I thought it was fake at first." By the end of that week, over 14,000 employees had received notice of preliminary bonus estimates. Internal morale soared. Meanwhile, the newly formed Justice Fund website went live. Sleek, minimal, independently managed by a neutral third party and a former federal judge. A simple promise on the homepage: if you were harmed, you'll be made whole. No lawyers, no waiting. Within 48 hours, over 90,000 claims were submitted. The public responded swiftly, and so did Washington. Senators called for hearings. Editorials demanded reforms. Law professors rewrote their syllabi. If one man could sidestep the traditional legal process with money, innovation, and calculated transparency, what did that mean for equal justice under the law? At the SEC, internal divisions became public. Some commissioners praised the $2 billion infusion of funds for enforcement and education. Others worried aloud about the optics, accepting money from the very person they were once tasked with punishing. In one particularly biting op-ed, a former federal prosecutor wrote, "This isn't restitution. It's a billionaire's blueprint for avoiding consequences. No matter how generous, it's dangerous." But for investors, actual investors, the result spoke louder than philosophy. By week's end, thousands reported funds deposited directly into their accounts. For them, it wasn't about precedent. It was about closure. And still, Elon Musk didn't gloat. No tweets, no public statements, just silence. It unsettled people. Then came the video. It was a short clip, barely 4 minutes long, uploaded without fanfare to Tesla's official YouTube channel. No dramatic music, no editing, just Musk, sitting in a plain room speaking into the camera. He looked tired, not defeated, not smug, just real. "I want to address what happened last week," he began. "I made a mistake, a careless tweet, and a lot of people got hurt. Investors, employees, regulators, my own credibility. I was wrong." A pause. I've always believed that if you break something, you fix it. Not with PR, not with excuses, but with action. And that's what I tried to do. He looked down for a moment, then continued. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for understanding. I'm asking that we make this moment useful, that it becomes something other people can learn from. The video ended with a single sentence on screen. Innovation without responsibility isn't progress. It was unlike anything Musk had ever released, and it went viral instantly. Tech journalists called it calculated, PR experts called it genius, psychologists called it revealing. For Judge Chen, it raised a different question, one he voiced quietly in chambers the next day. Is this justice? In a memo later leaked to the press, Chen wrote, "We may be entering an era where legal remedies are not always the most effective form of justice, especially when influence can be used constructively, but we must proceed cautiously. If public confidence in impartial justice erodes, no amount of money can restore it." In the months that followed, debates raged across industries. Law schools introduced courses called Wealth and Justice in the Digital Age. Investment firms held panels on market psychology in the age of Twitter. Bar associations struggled with whether such settlements, while legal, should be endorsed as best practice. One thing was certain. The Musk precedent, as it came to be called, had changed the landscape. But for Elon Musk, the shift was personal. According to insiders, he had begun scaling back his public presence, focusing more on engineering and product development. At SpaceX, progress on the Mars program accelerated. At Tesla, he launched internal leadership programs designed to reduce over-reliance on his own decision-making. And perhaps most surprising of all, at X, formerly Twitter, he quietly greenlit a division focused on combating misinformation about financial markets. As one employee put it, he's not just covering tracks, he's building fences. 6 months after the courtroom standoff, Musk was invited to speak at a private forum on corporate responsibility hosted by a coalition of CEOs and regulators. He declined the keynote, but he sent a short message to be read in his place. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for your reputation is not defend it, but earn it back, one decision at a time. The message was signed with just his initials, EM. And in a world used to seeing him loud and larger than life, that quiet note may have been the loudest thing he ever said. The Capitol Rotunda buzzed with quiet tension. Inside the Rayburn House office building, rows of cameras were already stationed, their lenses fixed on the long mahogany witness table that faced a semicircle of lawmakers. At the center sat Elon Musk, tireless, composed, and seemingly unbothered. But beneath the surface, he understood the gravity of what was about to unfold. This wasn't a courtroom. It was something far less predictable. It was politics. After Musk's unprecedented legal maneuver, offering billions in restitution to investors while avoiding a formal finding of fraud, congressional leaders, both Republican and Democrat, had been flooded with calls. Some praised his boldness. Others called it a subversion of justice. So a bipartisan committee was formed, fast-tracked, and called a hearing titled Modern Accountability, Billionaire Influence, and the Rule of Law. And at the top of the witness list, Elon Reeve Musk. The hearing room was standing room only. Behind the dais sat Representative Eleanor Wright, chair of the House Subcommittee on Financial Oversight. A former prosecutor with a no-nonsense demeanor, she'd built a reputation for holding corporate leaders to account, or at least trying to. To her right sat Congressman James Harlan, a populist firebrand from Texas who'd once tweeted that billionaires are the modern kings and Musk's courtroom stunt spit in the face of working Americans. Others on the panel ranged from tech-sympathetic moderates to skeptical progressives and staunch free market conservatives, but nearly all of them agreed on one thing. They didn't like being upstaged, especially not by a man who'd managed to turn a courtroom defeat into a public relations masterstroke. As the gavel banged, the hearing began. "Mr. Musk," Representative Wright said, adjusting her glasses, "this committee convenes not to retry your case. The courts have seen to that. but to examine whether extraordinary wealth can circumvent justice. Your actions have sparked public debate. We're here to determine if legislation is needed to prevent this type of outcome in the future." Musk didn't flinch. "Understood," he said simply. Cameras clicked. Representative Harlan leaned in. "Let's get straight to it, Mr. Musk. Do you believe justice in America should be influenced by personal net worth?" Musk met his gaze. "No, Congressman. I believe justice should be guided by outcomes that help people. In this case, I chose to help people faster and more generously than the court could." "That's not justice. That's buying forgiveness," Harlan shot back. Musk tilted his head. "Is a plaintiff better served by a symbolic verdict after 5 years of appeals or by actual restitution today? If we call that buying forgiveness, maybe the system needs rethinking." The room stirred. Some committee members frowned. Others raised eyebrows. The public watching from home leaned forward. Representative Wright held up a printed tweet. "You said, and I quote, 'If the law is broken, fix the law. Don't blame those who innovate around it.' Mr. Musk, are you suggesting that your legal strategy exploited a loophole?" "I'm saying," Musk replied, "that when laws are written in an analog era but applied to a digital one, the result is confusion. I didn't invent that. I just exposed it." Wright nodded slowly. "And what about the billions you pledged? Do you truly expect us to believe that wasn't a calculated move to avoid liability?" "Of course it was calculated," Musk said bluntly. "So was every move in that courtroom. But it wasn't manipulative. It was transparent. And it achieved what regulators claim they want: accountability and restitution." The hearing grew tenser with each exchange. Representative Natalie Vega, a tech-savvy freshman from California, leaned in. "Let me ask a different question," she said. "Are you aware that since your settlement, 3 CEOs have tried to use a similar approach and failed?" Musk nodded. "Yes." "And you don't see a problem with creating a model that only works for the ultra-rich?" "I see a bigger problem," Musk countered, "with a justice system that only punishes when it's slow, expensive, and symbolic. If being rich lets you fix the damage you caused faster and more efficiently, maybe the issue is the system that prevents anyone else from doing the same." Vega didn't respond right away. Outside the hearing room, political pundits were already live streaming commentary. Twitter was trending with hashtag Musk hearing, had justice for sale, and hashtag modern accountability. Clips were going viral within minutes, and Musk knew it. Every word was calculated not just for the room, but for the millions watching. Midway through the hearing, Rep. Harlan returned for another round. "Let's get this straight," he said. "You misled investors, then wrote a massive check, and now act like a reformer." "I never claimed to be a reformer," Musk replied. "I'm a builder. Sometimes I build rockets. Sometimes I build factories. And this time, I built a better way to resolve a lawsuit." "And what if everyone could do that?" Harlan pressed. Musk didn't miss a beat. "Then we'd have faster justice and fewer lawyers getting rich off delay." A murmur swept the room. At one point, Rep. Wright asked, "Would you support legislation to make your approach more transparent and replicable to open access to non-billionaires?" Musk paused. "I'd support legislation that makes justice faster, fairer, and less adversarial for everyone. If that includes my approach, great. If not, I'll keep building." It wasn't quite a concession, but it wasn't defiant either. For the next hour, the hearing continued, sometimes tense, sometimes philosophical. But one thing became increasingly clear. No one had expected Musk to appear so composed, so logical, or so persuasive. By the end of the session, Representative Vega whispered to a colleague, he didn't just defend himself, he reframed the debate. After the hearing, clips of Musk's statements were aired across every network. "Is Elon Musk changing the way we view legal accountability?" asked a CNN chyron. Fox News hailed him as a visionary truth teller, while MSNBC featured a roundtable warning of the risks of plutocratic influence. But in Congress, something more concrete was happening. Parental Rights Office began drafting a bill, the Transparent Restitution Act. It proposed that large-scale civil defendants could offer structured settlements provided they met strict criteria for independent oversight, prompt payment, and public disclosure. The bill would never have existed without Musk. Whether that was a victory for justice or a cautionary tale was still up for debate. But the billionaire who had been laughed at in a courtroom weeks earlier, he had just walked into the lion's den of American democracy and walked out with more than his reputation intact. He walked out having redefined what it meant to be accountable in the age of influence. The hearing room on Capitol Hill was packed. Camera crews jockeyed for position, journalists whispered updates into their microphones, and aides shuffled papers with quiet urgency. At the center of it all, seated behind a long, dark wood witness table, was Elon Musk. This wasn't a courtroom. It wasn't bound by the same solemn procedures or rigid decorum. But it was, in many ways, far more dangerous. Here, Musk wasn't facing a single judge like Edward Chen. He was facing an entire panel of elected officials, each with their own agendas, ambitions, and cameras pointed directly at them. And this time, it wasn't just about tweets or market manipulation. This was about precedent, about power, and about whether one man could outmaneuver the very system meant to hold him accountable. Senator Rachel Cortez, chair of the Subcommittee on Financial Oversight, cleared her throat and leaned forward. "Mr. Musk," she began, "do you understand why you're here today?" Musk looked up, not with defiance, but with calculated poise. "Yes, Senator. I believe you want to understand why I handled my legal obligations differently than expected, and why it worked." A few murmurs rippled through the room. It wasn't arrogance in his voice. It was precision, as if he'd already run simulations of this moment in his head. Senator Cortez didn't flinch. "We're here because some of us are concerned that what you did undermines the principle of equal justice, that your settlement, however generous, sidestepped accountability through sheer financial might. Is that fair to say?" Musk tilted his head slightly. "It's fair to say that I used resources available to me, but I didn't sidestep accountability. I enhanced it. I created restitution, education, and compensation systems faster and broader than any court could. That's not escaping justice. That's exceeding it." A pause followed, tense and thick. Representative Leo Madden, a sharp-tongued critic from the Midwest, jumped in. "You say that like it's noble, but it reeks of plutocracy, of buying your way out. Would a factory worker in Michigan get to rewrite their punishment like you did?" Musk didn't look offended. He looked ready. "No," he admitted. "But that's not because the system is broken. It's because most people don't have the means to improve outcomes beyond what's legally mandated. I do. And I chose to use those means constructively, not to dodge consequences, but to deliver them better." He let the silence linger. Across the dais, some lawmakers exchanged glances, frustrated not just by his answers, but by how compelling they were. Senator Cortez shifted strategies. "Mr. Musk, your actions sparked outrage in the legal community. Several former SEC commissioners have warned this could set a dangerous precedent. Do you acknowledge that possibility?" "Yes," Musk said without hesitation. "Every new path carries risk, but stagnation carries risk too. I don't believe in breaking systems recklessly, but I also don't believe in preserving inefficiencies out of fear." The room settled into an uneasy stillness. No grandstanding, no shouting, just the uncomfortable feeling that something fundamental was shifting in real time. From a side angle, a CS-PAN camera zoomed in slowly, capturing the narrowing of Senator Cortez's eyes. She leaned back slightly, recalibrating. "We're not here because you broke a law," she said. "We're here because you bent reality in a way that made us all question where the boundaries are." Musk nodded slowly. "And I think that's a good thing. Boundaries should be examined, not always crossed, but certainly understood, clearly." That landed with weight. In the front row, legal analysts scribbled notes furiously. One leaned over to another and whispered, "This isn't a hearing anymore. This is strategy class." And he's teaching it. Just then, a younger congresswoman from California, Representative Amani Price, spoke up for the first time. Her voice was soft but deliberate. "Mr. Musk, what would you say to the 23-year-old investor who believed in you, who bought shares after your tweet and lost savings when it all fell apart? Can you look them in the eye and say you did right by them?" The air changed. Even Musk took a second. "I would say I made a mistake," he answered. "A mistake I tried to correct as thoroughly as possible. I'd say I didn't hide. I didn't lawyer up and disappear for 5 years. I stood up. I paid. And I changed things so it wouldn't happen again." She held his gaze, then nodded once. The hearing continued. Hours more of questions, rebuttals, philosophical sparring. But nothing struck as deep as that moment. It was the inflection point. Outside, news crews framed their segments around it. Analysts split down familiar lines, some calling Musk a disruptor of justice, others hailing him as a pragmatic reformer. But one thing was certain: Congress hadn't broken him. In fact, as he stepped out onto the Capitol steps, blinking into the sunlight and flanked by reporters, it was clear Musk had done it again. He hadn't just survived scrutiny, he'd shaped it. Before the echoes of the hearing had even faded inside the courthouse in Washington, D.C., the shockwaves were already rippling across the country. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, Bloomberg, every major network cut into programming to dissect Elon Musk's statements. But this time, it wasn't just about Musk. It was about the shape of justice, the boundaries of wealth, and whether the system itself could be bent or broken. News anchors led with headlines like, "Musk in the hot seat," or "Was he?" "Justice rewritten by Billionaire logic," "The $5 billion apology, real accountability or PR theater." But the real storm, that hit social media. On TikTok, young investors flooded timelines with reaction videos, comedy skits, and breakdowns under the hashtag #MuskHearing. On X, formerly Twitter, hashtags like #ElonVs Congress and Billionaire Justice and Game Changed quickly climbed into the trending tab. Reddit investment threads exploded with debates. Did Elon Musk just hack the system? This wasn't a surrender. It was a revolution. He didn't buy justice. He rebuilt it. Still, not everyone was sold. One law student posted, "This doesn't look like anything they taught us in school, but I can't deny that somehow it worked." On CNBC, investor Kevin O'Leary gave his take. Elon won this round, again, but the problem is, not everyone is Elon Musk. Musk's proposal, creating restitution funds and offering a public proactive apology, sparked boardroom conversations at Fortune 500 companies. Some CEOs reportedly held emergency strategy meetings, trying to understand what had just happened. Legal teams issued memos to their clients warning, "Welcome to the new normal. Expect unconventional accountability in a high-profile litigation." Meanwhile, anxiety crept through the banking sector. Analysts were openly asking, if the Musk model spreads, what's the role of the courts now? Is justice becoming just another form of PR? And the most eyebrow-raising reaction? It came from the SEC itself. The $2 billion investor protection fund Musk had announced was already reshaping internal discussions at the commission. Yes, it boosted resources, but it also raised serious questions about independence. A spokesperson tried to calm concerns, saying, "External contributions will not influence our impartiality. We'll proceed with full transparency." Still, reports leaked that several members inside the SEC weren't thrilled. "Sure, we can expand enforcement now," one insider said, "but at what cost?" Law schools around the country scrambled to unpack it all. Panels popped up at Yale, Harvard, Stanford. One, titled "The Musk Doctrine," drew national attention. During her keynote, Professor Eleanor Shapiro laid it out clearly. Musk has introduced a new legal settlement category. It's not traditional compensation. It's not a fine. It's high-profile self-reflection combined with immediate restitution. Then she paused and added, "But is this model only available to the ultra-wealthy?" Tesla's stock price jumped 6% in the week following the hearing. Internally, morale spiked, especially among factory workers who'd just been awarded stock options. Some analysts called it next-gen capitalism. Others weren't so impressed. In the New York Times, columnist Naomi Kessler wrote, "Elon Musk has been forgiven by the public, but has the legal system done the same? Or did he just distract us all with a very expensive performance?" 2 weeks after the hearing, Musk appeared on CBS News for a rare one-on-one interview with anchor Gail Thorne. And this time, he didn't hold back. "I didn't tear the system down," he said calmly. "I stress-tested it. And if a system falls apart from just one shake, maybe it was already broken. I didn't follow the script written by lawyers. I followed my instincts. And honestly, it worked better. Some people won't like that. But here's the real question. Did I make an impact? Yes." Thorne leaned in. "But isn't it dangerous for a CEO to have this much influence over the legal process?" Musk didn't even blink. "What's really dangerous is putting power in the hands of people who can't even answer basic questions." The whole world was watching. Not just the US, but regulators in Brussels, Berlin, and London. In the EU, policymakers took notice, especially those drafting tech regulation. The Musk precedent had suddenly become a real-world case study. One French legal expert wrote in Le Monde, "If justice becomes just money plus apology is resolution, we're losing the core of criminal law." But in Die Zeit, a German columnist took a different view. If anyone could hack the system, it was Musk. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that's the wake-up call we needed. So here we are. The story that started with a tweet, escalated with a judge's laugh, and detonated under the spotlight of a congressional hearing. It's no longer just a court case. It's a turning point. It's a magnifying glass on how far a CEO, a tech mogul, a billionaire, can go when standing toe-to-toe with the system. And it leaves one question echoing louder than ever. Is justice really equal for everyone? Now look, when Elon Musk walked out of that courtroom, he wasn't just walking away from a lawsuit. Nah, he was walking straight into history. And not the kind of history that gets tucked away in law books either. This was front page, trending topic, everybody's got an opinion kind of history. And the craziest part? Nobody, not the media, not his own lawyers, not even Judge Chen, saw it coming. See, most billionaires, when they get backed into a legal corner like that, they lawyer up, go quiet, and settle behind closed doors. Not Elon. Man stood up in open court, called his own bluff, and dropped a $5 billion bomb on the legal world. Just like that. He basically said, "Here, take the money, fix the damage, let's move on." And you know what? People didn't know what to make of it. Some were impressed, some were pissed. Everyone was talking. That night, every cable news show had their own hot take. Rachel Maddow called it a bold and dangerous new precedent. Tucker Carlson said Musk was doing what weak institutions won't. Even The Daily Show jumped in, joking that Elon now takes customer support tickets from the SEC. And on Twitter, yeah, it's still X now, but we're calling it what it is, it exploded. "I love justice, #Richmond rules, #genius." Or grifter. People couldn't stop arguing. One side was like, "Finally, some accountability, the guy's putting his money where his mouth is." And the other side, "So we're just letting billionaires write their own sentences now? Cool." Even in corporate boardrooms, folks were getting nervous. CEOs called emergency meetings with their general counsels. Lawyers started rewriting crisis playbooks. A Goldman Sachs exec said it best. Musk didn't break the law. He bent the courtroom around his will. Let that sink in. Meanwhile, Musk? He didn't gloat. No mic drops, no Twitter threads, just a press release the next day that read, "Accountability isn't about punishment, it's about action. This is mine." Clean, simple, strategic. At Tesla HQ, the vibe shifted fast. The legal cloud was gone. Factory workers were buzzing about the stock options coming their way. And on the production floor, they hung up a sign that read, "He gave Wall Street the speech and gave us the shares." Legendary stuff. But hey, don't get it twisted. Not everyone was clapping. Over at the SEC, things got weird. Real weird. Musk had pledged $2 billion for enforcement and education, but now the watchdog had to figure out how to stay unbiased while taking funding from the dude they just tried to check. That's like getting a new leash from the dog you're supposed to be walking. One commissioner reportedly said in a closed-door session, "He's not just outsmarting the system, he's reshaping it." Law schools were buzzing too. Professors turned the whole case into next semester's curriculum. One Harvard law student tweeted, "This is going to be on the bar exam someday." And they're probably right. Meanwhile, in D.C., a few senators smelled blood. Hearings were called. Talking points flew. Elizabeth Warren led the charge. We just watched a billionaire turn justice into a negotiation. But the vibe in the country was more split than ever. Some people saw Elon as a genius who paid up fast. Others saw a guy who dodged real consequences with flashy checks and media spin. And maybe both are true. Maybe that's the point. Because what happened in that courtroom wasn't about one tweet. It wasn't even about Tesla. It was about the rules and who gets to rewrite them. And Elon, he's been rewriting rules his whole damn life. He redefined cars. He launched rockets. He bought Twitter. Now, he just redefined accountability. It's not justice as we know it, but it might just be justice as it's going to be. And that leaves one final question. If Elon Musk can set a law like this, what's stopping the next billionaire from doing it too? Others saw a guy who dodged real consequences with flashy checks and media spin, and maybe both are true. Maybe that's the point. Because what happened in that courtroom wasn't about one tweet. It wasn't even about Tesla. It was about the rules and who gets to rewrite them. And Elon, he's been rewriting rules his whole damn life. He redefined cars. He launched rockets. He bought Twitter. Now, he just redefined accountability. It's not justice as we know it, but it might be justice as it's gonna be. And that leaves one final question. If Elon Musk can settle the law like this, what's stopping the next billionaire from doing it too? Because once the blueprint exists, once one person redraws the lines, everybody else knows where to walk. In the end, the court didn't just witness a hearing, it witnessed a shift from precedent to personality, from legal procedure to billionaire playbook. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real legacy of this case, not the verdict, not the headlines, but the silence that follows. When the rules aren't broken, they're replaced.